Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Alright, Voss. Yes, you have finally found your way into the darkness of the Fox Den for this long-awaited collaboration of Dogman hunting that we must attend to. Yet please, hold on just one moment. Absolutely delicious. And now that I feel revamped and fully recharged, it is time for I and myself to take a walk into the madness.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf. And everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back to the Fox Den and another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. We have a new host and guest tonight who has found his way through the darkness and the werewolf-infested forest to sit around the late night fire and burn some timber in an attempt to figure out what is going on across the United States and the globe. Rye, how are you doing tonight, my friend? I'm going to throw you the Midnight Society book and let you tell the audience who you are, why you're here, and how you're doing, man.
All right. Well, thanks for that fantastic introduction. I love it. So my name is Rye. I host a show called Codega's Codex of Curiosities, and I'm a fan of alliteration. And for those who don't know I'll get into what my show is about. But for those who don't know what a Codega is, a Codega was a guide back and forth the 14th and 15th century that would escort people around in Venice. They would carry a lantern to keep away thieves, criminals, demons, and ghosts. And along the way, he would be telling them stories, reciting experiences that he had or previous guests had as well. And they would share stories with him as well. So that is where I get the moniker Codega from. And the Codega's Codex of Curiosities is a show where I interview people who've all walks of life, who've all had strange experiences, whether it be cryptids, dogmen, werewolves, Bigfoot, UFOs, alien abductions, glitches in the matrix, you name it. Anything that is strange and out of the ordinary, or our lost history, our true lost history, which seems to be something that it gets lost. We are told what to believe, and that's it, and we're never allowed to question. But that's what this show is about, is for questioning and finding that truth and finding the answers and guiding the people through to the other side. So that's that. Now, how did I get into this? And I think we all have like an origin story, to so to speak. And my origin story started back when I was much younger. I was dubbed the weird kid when I had an out of body experience at the age of 10 during school, of all things, running a race. I shot out of my body and saw everybody else running the race, including myself. And as soon as I realized I saw myself running, I came back in. But after that, as a 10-year-old, you just want to tell everybody. I think it's so cool, but for many others, it isn't cool. It's weird, and that's where it started. Was me being dubbed the weird kid. But I said this origin story, and there's always an event. There's always a buildup. Those were like the small buildups to the actual event, and the event that did this, the pinnacle, the climax of everything, was I was approximately 18, 19 years old, and I had gone out with some friends and had come home. I remember the evening was a beautiful evening. It was a cool, crisp evening. The Northern Lights were out because I'm originally from Northern Canada, and the Northern Lights were out, just dancing along. And I remember sitting out there watching them, like, this is amazing, but I got to get up really early in the morning for work. So I head up into bed, and I'm lying there, and I take a look at the clock, and I do the clock watching thing that most of us do when we can't fall asleep. And you're like, if I fall asleep now, I'll have 7 hours and 34 minutes of sleep. And then you look back, 7 hours and 19 minutes of sleep, and then 6 hours and 55 minutes of sleep, so on and so on. But I was laying there, and I I don't want to say that I got told, because that would be like there was someone telling me or a voice in my head telling me, but something compelled me to roll onto my back and look up. And so I'm laying in bed, and I roll onto my back, and I open my eyes and look up. And there, floating about 3 feet above me, was this entity. And when I say entity, it was this black form. I could see a head. I could make out the head clearly, the head. Then you could see the neck where it tapered in, the shoulders, the torso, the arms. But when it got round the waist and further down, it drifted off into like this white, wispy, Hollywood-esque almost smoke, like of a ghost that Hollywood would depict on their movies. But this was no Hollywood movie. This was the real thing. I'm laying there looking at this blacker than black being floating above me. Not only is that terrifying enough, but it was its eyes. Okay. So this is the thing that I've heard many other people talk about when they talk about cryptids or other shadow beings. They talk about the eyes, the glowing eyes, and that's exactly what I saw. They were red, glowing eyes, not like flashlights, but this incandescent glow. And I was locked in a stare with this thing, with this entity. And time had no meaning at this point. But I believe it was there for maybe 3 to 5 seconds, and it disappeared. And at that point, it disappeared. I could not move. And this is up for contention. Some people say, "Oh, that was sleep paralysis," but I say nay because I was able to roll onto my back and look up. I believe it was one of the mechanisms that we have whenever we're faced with something terrifying. It's either flight, fight, or freeze. And for me, it was freeze, and I stayed there. I don't know how long I stayed there, laying motionless in my bed, looking up at this entity, but it was gone. But I dare not move. I dare not move one bit. Perhaps it's going to come back, and if I don't move, then I'm safe. So the next thing I know, though, is I woke up in the morning and nothing. There was nothing there. I kept this to myself. I did not tell anybody at that time, though now, of course, I tell people about it because I feel that it gives power not to this entity but to other people to know that they're not alone when we've had these high strangeness experiences. That it's not normal, but there are other people who've had these experiences, and you don't want to be alone out there, and that's huge, is feeling this aloneness. It's you feel that no one's going to believe me. I had this experience, and who do I talk to? That's the biggest thing, is even your closest friends, you don't mention it because they're going to think that you're nuts. So you keep this to yourself. So it was at that point, and many other experiences after, but it was that specific point that changed the trajectory of my life, that caused me to go down a path of discovery, of empowerment against these creatures of the night, these beings, these things. It was that caused me to pursue. I pretty much backed away from the Catholic Church. I went down the New Age path, searching, as I believe everyone should do. I believe everybody should search for their truth. And I went down this path. I ended up becoming associated with a shaman. I was taken in and learned under the shaman, was taught by the shaman for a year. And then after that, I then discovered a medicine woman. It was kind of like this crossover. It was kind of like a pass from a shaman to a medicine woman. And I stayed with this medicine woman for a couple of years. I don't say stay, like not lived, but I assisted her with all her activities, with building a sweat lodge and facilitating and helping with that sweat lodge, being the firekeeper. And with that, still with all these events, I'm still searching, but learning how to protect myself, how to shield myself. And then, even then, it was almost a full circle, not back to the Catholic Church, but back to, God, God the Creator as well. And learning that with that, I have much greater power over anything that is going to come to try to disrupt me, or to cause fear. So that is the long story of how this all began.
Man, that is creepy, but I would want to say cool as well. But the problem is sometimes, obviously, using the word cool isn't necessarily cool to the individuals that are describing it. And real quick, that's why, my friend Sonia, one of my hosts, she thinks it's cool. She had an encounter where she almost jumped out of the car and wanted to get close. Her friends are like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "That's cool." They're like, "That is not cool." So I always have to tell myself, yeah, sometimes the word cool isn't necessarily what to use. As a journalist, though, and learning and hearing things, it's cool, but it's obviously frightening to, per se, yourself and obviously the people that it occurred to. But dang, that is definitely a very drastic way to get involved, I would per se, because I've never had any sort of paranormal activity myself. I've never seen anything like that. I have only had 2 encounters with potentially messed up human beings that I've covered before on my thread. Yeah, I could definitely see how that would be potentially traumatizing. And would you say that's the big reason why you are where you are and why you dive into the topics that you do and you've created your podcast?
Definitely. This is one of the reasons why. It was kind of like this. There's a quote from the movie Hellboy, which I always allude to. It's, the things that go bump in the night, we are the ones who bump back. Meaning, there's these things that are trying to scare us, but we don't take no crap from them, and we give that back, more or less. And that was the reason why I went down that path, because like I said, there was numerous other events. And when you said you haven't had paranormal experiences, but that's one thing myself, I've had too many to count, too many paranormal experiences to count. And I believe that that's almost a normal thing. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but once someone is marked, per se, by an event or an experience, it seems to almost like a magnet. It attracts those experiences greater and greater. Perhaps like people who've had Dogman experience or werewolf experiences, they something keeps kind of drawing them back in, or Bigfoot or Sasquatch type experiences. They keep having these experiences or tied into that. And so for myself, it was these paranormal experiences, and I believe much like a lot of these entities, is that they feed off fear. And the more fear they can get off you, the greater, the stronger they can become. The stronger they become, the easier it is for them to scare you and to pull that fear off of you. Which again, I believe this is it ties into so many things with this fear. And it seems so trivial, so small, so inconsequential, but I think it actually plays one of the biggest roles in this all is this energy, because we are all energy. We give off vibration, and people will be like, oh, that's just mumbo jumbo, that's just new age stuff. But here they are sitting on their cell phone, sending messages, text messages, through Wi-Fi, and our radio signals and our microwaves that we don't see, and it just works. Our cell phones just work, or the Wi-Fi just works. And then you mentioned about us having energy and giving off vibrations, and people think you're nuts. It's like, come on, guys, this is one and the same. We only see, what is it, like 1% of the total spectrum of light. If we could see 50%, I think we'd go insane. We'd be able to see all these, microwaves, all these things happening. But I kind of, I'm kind of going off on a different track. But yeah, this is exactly the reasons why, is because, and I say the Codex of Curiosities because I've always been curious about all this stuff. Growing up, there was, for me growing up, the biggest draw for me was, of course, was two of them, was the Loch Ness Monster and Bermuda Triangle. Those two things I found absolutely fascinating. The Bermuda Triangle is such a myth. Maybe the Loch Ness Monster for me has kind of fallen away, but the Bermuda Triangle is such a, I know, enigma. It's like, what is that? What is truly going on there? Is it a portal? Is it a gateway? And if so, which I actually believe there is something there, like some sort of portal gateway. I believe that there's these portals and gateways throughout our world. Specifically in the national forests. That's why these missing 411s happen so. There's a high frequency of these missing 411s in these national forests, because I believe that there's these portals there, and creatures from other dimensions access these portals, and they come through. Yeah, so that is kind of like the basis of my beliefs, is that, and everything I think is actually connected. You got your Dogman puzzle over here that we're trying to figure out the pieces. You have your Bigfoot one over here. You have your UFO. You have your your alien abductions. You have your paranormal. But I believe they are all connected. It's one little pieces of a puzzle, like little puzzle pieces of a huge, massive puzzle, and we got to take a step back and put it all together. And that's what I want to do. I want to, try to find all these pieces of the puzzle and put them all together into this one larger puzzle, so we can actually see what is going on, to try to get some answers, try to get some truth, because we're, the suits are leading us astray. The mainstream media is controlled by all these corporations, and they want you just to think a certain way. And if they keep inducing the same message, I believe it's like after 2 weeks of hearing the same message, your brain believes it, which is a form of brainwashing. And so we need to find the truth. We need to turn off that TV, turn off that brainwashing device, and find the truth. And don't get me wrong, I get hung up on things, and I believe there's a lot of times we all do. And we always got to find our North Star and get back on track, and just looking for that truth. And again, that's what it is. It's trying to find the truth, trying to find answers, and not to be afraid while we're doing this.
Boom. Very well stated, man, right there. That's some great choice of vocabulary, and also a great way to approach things. I'm a journalist. I specialize in photojournalism. I try to always approach things as logical as possible, and then send it in the direction that I have people who specialize in it outside of the more logical, meaning per se, I have a science team that I work with. I really try to focus a lot on why people are missing near cave systems, national forests, modern day and prehistoric predator behaviors, these strange sightings of hyenas, baboon, canine-like creatures, etc. I always try to first, hit it with as much logic and science, and then when things don't fall into that, I definitely make sure to reach out to people that specialize in those other areas, because like a big thing is, before I want to hear how you feel about the whole, Dogman topic and Sasquatch topic. Like, we look at it as it could either be physical, which I do believe a lot's going on, and that's what I just explained to you, and then some think extraterrestrial, which is how, they kind of specialize in that aspect, and they look at the reports that fall into that category. Also, paranormal, which again, they all specialize and look into that aspect, and we all sit down and try to figure out, okay, where does this report belong? When we figure out where it belongs, that more or less like sector or cog starts kind of trying to focus on that aspect, and then we again try to regroup and figure out in general kind of what's occurring. Well, I'm really caught up in a lot of different directions of, I do know people are super screwed up and are involved with some of the missing people for sure. I do know people make terrible decisions in general. They're involved in their own disappearances and such, because I mean, there is still a ton of wilderness out there. If you and I are out there by ourselves and we're not paying attention, we trip and fall and break our neck and fall in between this crevice covered up by some brush that doesn't even look like it was a crevice. Yeah, when they're out there searching for us, they're not pulling all that stuff away. It's occurring. Obviously, predators are taking people as well. And then you have some still, after all of that, there are still cases of, well, what the heck? Where are these people going? Cave hyenas, short-faced cave bears, the Dinopithecus, which is an enormous baboon. All these creatures only supposedly went extinct 10,000, 11,000 years ago. That is not long ago at all. In cave systems, the environments don't change pretty much at all in there. I mean, our spelunker and paleontologist expert, May Koo, has been very deep into caves, and you can see things that have been there for very long periods of time where you could just kick it or even put your own hand in there and ruin this ancient bear claw mark. Think, you and I are out hiking and cave hyenas, which would have been in packs and stuff, they grab us and yank us up in there. Well, we know less about caves than we do the ocean and outer space. Like Meku says, only 10% of cave systems reconnect to the surface. Well, that's not good news for us that have potentially just been carried away. And then the short-faced cave bear spent 85 to 90% of its time in the caves. It would go out, get its food, and go back in and just roam all around. I don't really think it's that far-fetched, and nor do our science team, that some of these ancient predators that should not really have gone extinct didn't go extinct. And I mean, you have the ringdocus, which looked to be like a cave hyena or a dire wolf, maybe just in the late 1800s, that was shot and then taxidermied. I don't know. Where do you feel you fit in with your thought on this whole topic, man?
Great segue into this. And I believe that there are some creatures who have survived. We're talking animals. I believe there are animals that have survived that, like these giant black cats as well. I don't think there's anything paranormal about them. I don't think there's anything supernatural about them. I just believe that, what gives them that air of mysticism is that we're told that they don't exist. And the authorities having jurisdiction will say, tell us, no, they don't exist. And so everybody's like, no, they don't exist. But they're still being seen. They're even photographed. And so I do believe that there are these creatures out there. And, it's ridiculous to say that some of them haven't, they've all went extinct. No, they haven't. We like you said, we are still finding things to this day that are supposedly extinct or non-existent, and we're still discovering these things. But the worst part is that I believe we're too close-minded, and we just like, no, no, it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist, until some authority figure tells us, no, it does, we found it. Oh, okay, it exists, it exists, it exists. And I think, like, the issue is that we have to be able to think for ourselves and be able to say, well, by rational thinking, they're in this area, there's been 150 sightings of a large black cat, so there has to be something. And like you said, there's these cave systems that are in there. Well, I'm assuming that these creatures have, know how to navigate these caves, whereas we don't have a clue. We've lost our ability to properly explore. Not saying that some, like you said, on your team, you have the who's dealing with the prehistory, or the caves. There's a very few select people that can navigate caves properly, but for most part, no one does. And like you said, yeah, a lot of these missing four, not a lot of these, but some of these missing 411s literally could be people just making bad decisions and have some extremely bad luck falling into a crevice or something like that and disappearing. Like, I was watching a show recently where this guy was out searching for lost treasure, and he fell down a very steep cliff, broke his leg, and no one was coming to save him. Didn't have his phone or anything, couldn't move, and he ended up from exposure, because he broke his leg. And that is something that it's very much possible, like a possibility that can happen to these missing people. That all being said, I believe that there are these creatures out there that defy any type of rational thinking, and by that I mean that they're not survivors of the previous ice age. I believe that they're a type of species that has either been genetically modified, or that is literally coming through plasma portals. And plasma portals are, and shout out to my good friend Brad from the Awaken podcast, who dives in deep into plasma portals and how these beings and things are materializing. He describes that they are in the ether, and they are able to form these plasma portals, and they come through, and they are plasma as they come through. And this plasma is trying to create a form. And what it's doing is it's drawing from its near environment. And by doing this, like, let's go to Sasquatch. Whenever people talk about Sasquatch, they always talk about this smell of disgusting smell. Well, what it's doing is it's manifesting within the forest. So what is it pulling? It's pulling rotten material to actually create itself, to materialize itself. So this is what Brad believes. I'm not fully on board with that yet. I think it's a great theory, because I think that's all we have is just theories on this. But I do believe that these creatures are walking through some gateway that we have lost the ability to operate, or we've never known the ability to operate. I did talk to one individual who literally saw a Sasquatch pull out a huge stick, and this is something that a lot of people talk with Sasquatch, that they hear these wood knocks. Wood knocks are synonymous with Sasquatch. He watched the Sasquatch walk up to this tree, grab this huge branch, hit the tree twice. The tree opened up. Okay, so it opened as in a doorway, and the beast stepped through and disappeared. Now, I find that really fascinating. Like, it entered into this other realm, this other dimension, like a pocket dimension almost, per se. And this ties into the elves of Iceland. So the elves in Iceland, they say that they live in these rocks. And if you're allowed invited in, you can enter into a rock, and it could be a small little rock. But once you go in, it's a huge home within this rock. It's very similar to Harry Potter, when they had the tent, and you walk in. On the outside, the tent looks like the small tent, but you walk in and it's huge. It's like this pocket dimension that you're going into. Perhaps this is something that they're going into. They're going into these pocket dimensions that maybe that they're home, or they're a gateway to another realm. A lot of some other people that I have talked to as well mention a large metal sound, like a very large, like a boom, like a metal door, like slamming, a huge metal door slamming. And then either these creatures appear or they disappear. And they're relating that to being, the opening and shutting of these portals, of these gateways. So I lean more to the fact that these creatures share this world and another world. And so when some people say, oh, they're just a spiritual being, or they're these magical beings, or some people, there's the other camp that's like, oh no, they're just physical. I believe they're both. So they're these magical spiritual beings that are able to traverse into our reality by going through these portals. But once they enter our reality, they start having to obey the laws of physics and our world laws, within and how we operate within this, so that they start becoming more and more physical. The longer they're here, the more physical they become. And that is what I believe is happening. That's one aspect to this all.
Dang, gnarly stuff and great right there, man. Yeah, there's so much that is going on for sure that it is important to tackle it from all kinds of different aspects and angles, and make sure you just, like I always say to people, if they want to play in their own little mud puddle, that's okay. I don't like to diss anybody and things like that. I mean, I will never publicly slander people. I mean, if people ask me my opinions about things, obviously I'm a individual that stands by my words. So yeah, I have opinions about things, but again, I never make sure to play my own mud puddle. I bring in all kinds of outside information, because when you play by yourself, you get a one-sided perspective, all right? You then are convincing yourself something that you are already convinced by, right? So you need that outside information. Like, one thing I'll give you an example of before I actually give you a couple cool things that you will potentially like to hear. Well, our environmentalist, she's a scientist, yes, knows animal behavior. And just because I'm the head of our science team, I'm not a scientist, I'm a journalist, okay? They're just my friends and beautiful minds that I've put together. Yes, I'm the ringleader, I guess, but I'm the dumbest one out of all of them, if you want to, be realistic about it. I consider myself intellectual, and so do they, but I'm not a scientist, okay? Again, I'm a journalist. But we always try to make sure that we are learning and approaching the things in the best possible, mannerism, understanding things, and just trying to be like, all right, well, could this be occurring? Or, well, how is this tied into, all of this, like you said? So that's why it's great to have the different angles. I mean, Dennis Carroll is a occult specialist, has spent a ton of time diving into religious aspects, used to be a minister, and he is a paranormal expert. Yes, boom, great. And then I have a biologist by the name of Kyle that, again, dives into that aspect. And then I could sit here and I love my whole science team, but, that's not what we're here for at the moment. I'm just trying to explain that it's important to use that, and understand, okay, there's multiple facets going on, meaning that people make mistakes sometimes. All right, like recently, sad thing to see, because I'm a huge animal lover and I just couldn't do any of this stuff. I've never hunted, never will. I have a pet squirrel, man. I help out, neighborhood local stray cats, and like to feed the outside squirrels and chipmunks, man, and crows. All right, but there was a picture that showed a wolf from Canada, all right, jet black, and then a wolf from Yellowstone, which a lot of people don't realize that the wolf from Yellowstone also has, well, Canadian bloodlines into it. So it causes, well, you would think them to be larger, which they are, than normal wolves. But then in this photo where they're hanging up beside each other, even though it's got blood lineage from that Canadian wolf, well, it's so much smaller. And you should see all the comments. Everyone's like, oh my goodness, look at that Dogman. No, it's just a misunderstanding of how big dang wolves are, you know? I do believe, like you were saying, there's so much going on, but a lot of people are just not understanding what they're seeing. You want to hear some pretty cool stuff that we think ties into a lot of this. Well, the first one, not so much. The first one is just like you said, to show how prehistoric and not even just predators, animals in general, really might still be kicking around. So the woolly mammoth, again, they were supposedly around quite recently, right?
Yep.
Well, even closer now, there's a remote island in Siberia. A lot of people don't realize Siberia is pretty isolated, okay? It's remote, it's not really densely populated. There's an island on there that, as of 347 years ago, they found evidence supporting that mammoths were still in that area. That right there is absolutely mind blowing because 345 years ago, it's really not a huge time frame that's like, whoa. And now we were able to speak to some really excellent scientists from Russia, which the problem is, though, unfortunately, I don't know how much more information we can get out of this because it's hard enough to get communication. And the fact that we even got this and the photos and everything, and we're able to see the article and that they got the article out to the public in general is beautiful. But permafrost is, well, cool when you're finding stuff like this, not cool when we're losing a ton of ice. And also, a lot of these people have gotten strange diseases and stuff that have been cured but basically have been dormant forever. Like one guy recently who found this cool, I believe, was part of a mammoth, also got this super old skin rash because this virus was dormant in with the woolly mammoth. I mean, they had never seen it before, they cured it, but yeah, that's not probably very good either. There was an 18,000-year-old jet black, yes, and I can actually send you the actual picture, and here in the video, Meiku drew an image for us because she's an amazing artist. It looks like nothing else they have ever seen before. They have wolves, they have other canines. You can see the difference in colorations. This is midnight black with those elongated fangs, and the back of its head is a little bit larger, which would mean it had a potentially larger brain in the back spot, so its behaviorisms would have been different, and it's never been documented before, and it's in pristine condition. We think that right there falls into a lot of the potential midnight elongated canine-like sightings. And you think about that as we start tying this up, brother.
Wow, I find that absolutely fascinating. It's really interesting that we're making these discoveries, and it's again like it's about having that communication open, those lines of communication open, so we can accept these new information and find out, yeah, these things were here, But I do agree with you. What's kind of scary is these unveiling or these releasing of these possibly new pathogens or bacteria or something like that is going to happen. But it's very, very interesting that we're making these discoveries. I definitely would love to see this picture of this creature, this jet black creature, and like it's really interesting. And yeah, when you were saying like the wolves, yeah, the Yellowstone wolves, I remember when they shipped them down there from Canada. I'm old enough to remember when they did that. So that was really I think that was really cool that they did that. But yeah, the size of them. But that's an issue though, is that people jump to conclusions of when you're saying that, like, oh, it's a dogman or it's a werewolf. No, it's like the same thing I find with pareidolia, where people believe that they see something out of nothing. And don't get me wrong, sometimes they're so convincing, but it's and I don't want to be mean to the people. I don't want to be rude to the people, but we have to have a little bit of skepticism when we walk into these things. We can't just blindly believe everything, and we shouldn't deny everything as well. We should be somewhere in the middle, but be able to logically approach something. Try our best to remove through logic is like, well, it's not this, it can't be this, it can't be this, and deduce that yes, that is something, or no, that isn't, that's just pareidolia, that's just some play of the light, it's just a trick of the light, it's just the way these leaves are sitting, it's not what you think it is. but that's a difficult thing to to move forward with. But one thing I was going to get on here, I know we're getting closer to the end here, but I want to say is when we're talking about Dogman and everything, there is one thing that I do believe that it gets not overlooked, but I believe that the suits, they themselves have their own Dogman per se. I definitely believe that they have been working genetically with these creatures and have constructed their own. And we look at what is that? Dog Soldiers, I think is what it's called. There's a movie. I believe that a lot of times the movies really show us a lot of truth. They have to show us the truth to be able to do it, because as beloved, as above, so below. They have to be able to show you here what we're doing so we can do it over here. What we do in this world, we do also in the spiritual world as well. So they have to show you these things. But I do believe that there is a aspect to this where they have their hands on these creatures and they're genetically altering them or working with them to be able to, kind of like a weapon. I don't want to say Weapon X or anything like that, because that sounds ridiculous. I don't want to tie it to Marvel, even though that there is truth to that, as well. But I do believe that these creatures are being modified and created and used in a way as a weapon. A lot of times whenever there's these events of these interactions, these creatures, there is a lot of men in suits, men in black or men in these dark suits that show up. And it's awfully peculiar for this to happen at that same time. Why is that happening? Well, I believe that there is a connection. But then the last thing I want to bring up is the connection with the Nephilim, or some people say Nephilim. And what is that? Well, I'm going to tell you. So the Nephilim, for those who don't know, are the offspring of the fallen angels, the Watchers. Okay, and that's what they did. Was the Watchers, laid with women of the earth, and they bore these monstrosities, or men of renown as well, were these Nephilim. But not all Nephilim were these perfect creatures. As in men of renown, you hear stories of men of renown. Hercules is one of them. Perseus is another. So Achilles. So you hear about these great warriors that perform these great feats. These are Nephilim, but there is much more crazier ones as well. This is the giant. When you hear the story about the Kandahar giant, and where am I going with this? Well, I believe the children of the Nephilim, which are the Raphaim or the Elohim. I'm mixing those two up, but it could be the Raphaim. The children of the Nephilim, I believe, are what you get when you get into the Sasquatch area. Now, then when you say, well, okay, we were talking about Dogman earlier. Well, that is also, there was this coming together, we'll say, of the Watchers of the Nephilim and animals. And some people say, well, those chimeras, they created chimeras, which it could be as well. So these creatures, I believe, are creatures of old who are gifted these abilities and who were created. And so these creatures could be much, much older than what we think. And they have access to the realm that is just beyond ours that we don't see. And that's when they come through. And then we do see them. So I kind of went all over on this last little bit, which is fine. I don't think it's a big issue, but this is, I believe, like I said, it's all tied together. I believe that some of them are tied together with the Nephilim, whereas other are these genetic modifications. And lastly, actually, one I didn't say is where we get into something along like the Skinwalker or the actual werewolves, where people have a latent gene or a dormant gene that somehow gets activated. And that's not Skinwalker, but that's more of like a werewolf, where they get this latent gene gets activated and they turn into these creatures. Whereas Skinwalker, of course, is a Navajo term, which means, it was when a medicine man they would put a skin on of a creature, and they would then be able to transform into that. But first they had to actually do something that was, they had to unalive someone who they love dearly to gain these powers, which is, that's a whole other bag of worms. That's a whole other story. That's a whole other rabbit hole to go down. But I don't think we have the time for that today.
That's great stuff right there, man. And no, I mean, we hopefully can start linking up at some point. I would like to get you on bi-weekly. I know you're a busy guy, but I will definitely at some point pop over if you need me to as well. Just give me a heads up. But yeah, we can definitely dive into the whole skinwalker aspect after, because there's a huge difference between all of that. But yeah,
yes,
heck yeah, man.
Yes. I know. I was kind of like in the last bit here, kind of jumping around a little bit, but yeah, no, definitely. Whenever I do my next live, definitely would love to have you on. It's something that I think would be fantastic, and I think it's great that you have like this team with you, and you're approaching things logically, and have this team where you guys can investigate things. You know, you got your biologists, you got your, you yourself, the journalist, and it just kind of everybody working together. I think it's fantastic.
Appreciate you, man. Very kind words. And no, the stuff you do is excellent as well. Do know that you have your Facebook group, and I'm not sure if I have ever had a chance to get your YouTube link. So make sure you send that to me so I can sub to that and also get the links up in the description of the videos.
For sure.
The audience, make sure you go over and check out what he's popping out all the time, because there's a big difference from what I cover over here and what a lot of my other hosts get a chance to dive into and cover. So if you are interested in a broader range of topics, make sure you go over and check out all of Rye's links, and it will be up in the video. And he puts out great stuff. So do look at getting him back on here very soon. Appreciate your time, man. And is there anything else you'd like to touch base on before we let you roll?
I think that's it, and I just want to say, like, if anybody's had any of these experiences, reach out, contact us. You don't have to come on the show or on your show or my show to talk about it, but sometimes it's good just to reach out and say, just to get that story out of you, because a lot of times it's holding within you, and it gives you power. It takes away power from whatever caused that fear and whatever caused that experience. But for you to release it and to find someone else who believes you, and that's one thing I say is, I don't question that you had the experience. I question you about the experience. I want to ask questions about it. Like, the more information we have and we can compile and put together, the more answers we can come with, the more solutions, the more the truth we can find. And by doing that, perhaps, we can shed light onto something that has been a mystery for, thousands of years, and we can all move forward together and, become stronger. That's about it. It's just, it's all about us coming together and not segregating, and building this community. And you've done a fantastic job doing that as well. If anybody is looking to find me, my Facebook group and YouTube channel, Spotify, everything else, you guys can always find me at Codega's Codex of Curiosities. You just throw that into Google and you'll find, whether you want to listen to Apple, Spotify, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, Twitter, Blue Sky. I'm kind of on a little bit of everything, and even TikTok as well.
Excellent stuff right there, my friend. And to the audience, boom, make sure you go over and check that all out. Yes, we do need to conclude the meeting of the Midnight Society. But no worries, we will be back together very soon. And the midnight fire is always burning here in the Foxden. So I do appreciate you hanging out with us tonight, my friend.
I appreciate it even more. I appreciate you having me on, and us making this happen. It's great to connect, and to network, and to build that community. And we're all doing our part. We really are. You're more centered into the Dogman werewolf world, and investigating everything there. And there's other people, like Bigfoot Michigan Rob. He's into the Bigfoot, and There's the Blondes and Booze. They're all about the paranormal. And Brad from the Awaken podcast, he is about the awakening of our consciousness, of our minds, and that's what it's all about. It's all about this awakening, this revelation that we're all working towards, and hopefully everybody sees it as that. We are a team. That's one thing a lot of people don't realize. We are, even though we may not be on the a same group, we all are on the same team doing this together.
Ooh, you legends, you. Thank you to every single one of you that did tune in tonight. I really do appreciate the support. Please like, comment, subscribe, feed the algorithm, and I will catch you very soon.